why sacraments, right? Why sacraments? One reason God uses sacraments to confer grace is because their uses of visible signs correspond to our nature, right? Or what is our nature? Human nature, composite, right? We're body and soul, right? We're material body, invisible soul, right? Immaterial soul, right? Not just invisible, because air is invisible, right? So immaterial soul. Okay, let's continue on. Sacraments correspond to human nature. Mainly think about us. Think about your body and soul, right? How does it work? You're not just body, you're not just soul, right? You're both and, right? So what does that mean? How do we communicate our soul, right? How do we recognize what's going on in our soul, right? Through language, what we're doing right now. What am I doing right now? I'm speaking what's in my mind, right? My intellect is filled with truth. I am communicating the invisible and immaterial truth that I know, right? Through language, which is picked up by you through your ears, right? Through your senses, right? Through the body. Amazingly enough, right? Your ability to reason. Also, what about choice, right? We show our choices, right? Through our actions, right? Our choice is an immaterial thing. Choose God or reject God, right? But that choice, right, is then actualized in the material world. Amazingly enough, right? So what do we have? We have God can give grace any ways he wants, right? He can say, recite, the Lord's Prayer, and boom, my grace is upon you. He can say, shake your fist at somebody, and grace is there, right? And he could do that. He could just say, I know what's going on in your heart, and I'm just going to make it appear, right? He could do that. He's God. He can do whatever he wants. But what do we see with Christ? We see Christ in his 3 years of public ministry doing something awesome, right? We see him working his miracles. And his miracles are so cool, but we can learn a lot from his miracles. And the fact that God doesn't go against or doesn't act outside of or doesn't reject or neglect human nature. He gave us human nature, right? He created us as human persons. And God, in his greatness, right, continues to speak to us, to communicate to us in the means that he established for us, right? What does that mean? It means that God could save us anyway, right? But as human persons, what does he do? He becomes man, right? He becomes incarnate. He takes on human flesh, right? He puts a visible face to the immaterial and invisible God, right? For our sake, not for his own sake, right? He doesn't have to become man. He's God, right? So he saves us, right? According to the plan that he creates, right? And he wills, that goes along with our nature, that helps us say, this makes sense according to who we are. So we say the same thing in Christ's miracles. What do we have in Christ's miracles? Take, for example, one of the great ones, the miracle of the deaf man, right? Where Jesus puts his fingers in his ears, right? I think he spits, and he says, be opened, right? And the man can hear. What's amazing about that, right? Think about the physicalness of it, right? Think about the reality. You can imagine what's going on here. Does he need to do that, right? Does Christ need hands and ears to work his power, right? Is God that limited to where he can't? He's not all powerful. He needs the help of nature to work his miracle. No, right? He's above it. He's beyond it. But then why does he do it if it's not for his sake, right? Why does he put his fingers in ears and spit and say, be opened, right? Have all this, right? If it's not for his sake, then it's for ours, right? Because God doesn't do anything without reason. God doesn't do anything that's unnecessary, right? God does things with a purpose. And so he does it for our sake. What does that do for our sake, right? It helps us as human persons, right? Because it does not just the invisible, but it's connected to the visible, right? That the two come hand in hand, that God works his miracle in such a way, right? So that there's the physical thing, right? Fingers in the ears are what's going to be healed, right? The speaking be opened, what is audible, right? A visible sign, right? What's this all about? Kind of like cleaning someone's ear, right? Why is that important? It's important because even though the visible sign isn't what works the miracle, Christ gives the grace and works the miracle through the visible sign, right? So what do we have? We've got Christ. He is the one with the power, right? We've got a visible sign, right? The visible sign That is the channel through which God pours out his grace. From who? Right? Christ pours out the grace through the visible sign. Not necessary, but how he does it. Right? Now, let's continue on for human actions. What is a truly human action? An action of man. Right? A human action is not just an action of the body, and it's not just an action of the soul, but it's both the body and soul doing the same thing, saying the same thing. What does that mean? If I say nice haircut to somebody, right? And at the same time I say nice haircut, I roll my eyes, right? Even though I'm telling you I'm communicating what I think, right? My internal, right? You read my external signs and you say there's contradiction, right? They're saying two things, right? In other words, my body is saying something different than my soul, right? And there's something messed up there. Human actions are when our body and soul align, right? That's why love is so important as we continue on. That's why marriage is so important, right? That's why in the church, sex itself, right, is the same thing as love, right? It's the bodily saying, I love you, right? What does I love you say? I seek what is best for you. And if I'm seeking what's best for you, it's forever, not for a moment, because for a moment is not what's best for you. What's best for you is continual. And it's saying total, right? If I love you, I'm saying totally gift to you, right? So sex, right? The only way you can say, I want what's best for you in your body, I give myself to you, right? And I say what's best for you, right? Also should say the same thing. It should say it's lasting, right? And it's total. That's why the church talks about how this is plus love is a true human action, and it's true only within the confines of matrimony. Because in matrimony, you are fully giving yourself totally, right? And forever, right? It is where you find love, right? That's why one that says I love you, but then does that outside of marriage is really saying, I truly don't. Because I may not give myself to you forever, right? I may not saying total, right, gift of self to you and for you, right? And when that's the case, you're not saying love because that's what love says, right? So there's contradiction, right? So got a little off topic, but it's very important, right, to talk about human actions, body and soul. So God, right, works miracles that align with that very thing, right? The visible and the invisible. So he could say, I can give you grace outside of your human nature and outside of human actions. But he says, right, that I give you grace, right, that's connected to and working through and in cooperation with the very way that I created you, with human nature and human actions, right? And in the way he created us, right, Christ established a means to receive grace that doesn't contradict or go against how he created us, but it perfectly aligns with how he created us. That he created us, right, with body and soul. And as he works his miracles, sacraments, right, are physical things that we go through in which we experience grace that touches and changes and gives us God's very life for our soul, right? So that a sacrament is the perfect example of God saying, through your human nature, and not against it, I'm going to work and give you that grace of redemption and continue on what I promised you. Redemption. There we go. So that's why we church recognizes it from the very beginning, right? Grace is not something that we do or that we create, right? But grace is given by Christ, and Christ establishes a means that fits with human nature. And so when people say, why, oh, why do you have to do things, right, in order to get grace? Well, because Christ is set up a certain way that fits with everything else we do, right? In the way he created us. Why do we do things? Because God said, do this, right? That fits with the very way that I've created you. It's natural, right? And in that way, we can participate fully and bodily in the great grace that he gives, right? So in a human way, he gives grace for us, right? For human person and human nature. Let's see what it is. In a human way, he gives it. In a supernatural way, he gives it. But for the human person, body and soul. That's why the sacraments are awesome.